Thank you, Reagan. I really appreciate it. Hi, everybody. I am Franny Kendall. I am a DCPS Health Education and Physical Education Specialist. I have been with the district for going on 16 years now, I believe. And this is my first time leading a Parent Academy course, so I'm very excited to be here. And of course, on my first time, my fire detector alarm is just started beeping within the last 3 minutes. So I am really sorry if that beeps and chimes in. But that's how it rolls when we are all, living in this technology world. I also have Tanya Goodwin with us, and she works with HerSong. She is their national curriculum director, and she has partnered, we have partnered with HerSong for the last probably 5 or 6 years now, working on human trafficking and child trafficking prevention lessons that we will talk about during our presentation. But if you will bear with me for just a second, I am going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get this going. All right. Tanya, can you give me a thumbs up if everyone can see my screen? I am hoping they can. I believe so. If not, Tanya, if you will just unmute yourself and let me know, that would be great.
We can see it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we are here tonight because we are going to discuss human trafficking and child trafficking in the state of Florida, as well as how it's affecting students. And oh, this is going to be really annoying. I'm so sorry, you guys. But we're going to talk about human trafficking today. So in case you are not aware, FLDOE, which is the Florida Department of Education, has a state board ruling that is requiring child trafficking prevention education. This was adopted in September of 2019, and it requires annual instruction for students in grades K through 12. We have implemented skills and evidence-based instruction, and it is developmentally appropriate. We do have lessons, 4 lessons for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all the way up through 12th grade, and every grade level has different lessons or grade appropriate lessons for them. We have adopted, because of that, a Duval County School Board policy, which includes a human trafficking and domestic violence course that is required annually for all staff members. That has become available as of this August, and our teachers and staff are currently working through that through this school year. That was adopted in March of 2020. It requires the training and education for all staff, and then the student portion comes in with the curriculum that we are running. And we also have resources that are available to our students when we present these lessons, as well as for our staff members. Tanya, do you want to add anything about the curriculum that we are using right now?
We just finished a pilot study in Duval County. We wrapped it up, I believe, the end of May, beginning of June. And some of the teachers were responses, and we took that into heart, and we made some accommodations. We added some more activities, and we're getting ready to roll out the final product, final product here in April. The one that's currently being used is great, but we just tried to make it even better.
Absolutely. So what Tanya is referring to is last year, we were able to pilot the program that would be eventually passed across the state for any school district to use. And with that feedback that was provided from a large group of teachers, we were able to, Tanya's group was able to modify the lessons and make them even stronger and even better, and they have received phenomenal feedback. But those are available for all of our teachers, and it is in the teacher's curriculum guide for them to see. All right. So our agenda tonight, we are going to go through a little bit of a tour of human trafficking. So why are we talking about it? Who does it affect? And how are we able to help? So we are going to dive right on into this. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and Tanya will monitor them and jump in when and where she can. All right, so what exactly is human trafficking? Human trafficking is considered the modern day form of slavery. Another human being imposing their will and control over a victim in the exchange of something for a service. Unfortunately, there are more slaves in the world today than ever, even at the height of the transatlantic slave trade. So how do we start to become abolitionists and activists to shift the narrative? How do we get involved and decrease the occurrence of what is happening in our communities? Legally, there must be two components that are present in the equation that would qualify a behavior as trafficking. So an action, which means any person inducing, persuading, or etc., anything of value with the means of force, fraud, or coercion. Either physical violence or a deceptive promise or intimidation or manipulation is often involved as well. Taking the action and means and adding them together for the purpose of sex or labor trafficking. When prosecuting an adult, you have to prove that these are the means, so force, fraud, and coercion, to control the victim if the victim is an adult. But when we're talking about a minor, there's no burden of proof. The act is automatically considered trafficking. Children most often don't have the ability to choose this for themselves, so without question, they have most often been forced or tricked into these situations. So what is the difference in sex trafficking versus labor trafficking? Sex trafficking is the action or practice of forcing an individual into performing and providing commercial sex acts or services such as pornography, dancing or stripping, and prostitution. Whereas labor trafficking is the action or practice of forcing an individual into providing any form of labor, such as debt bondage, forced labor, and involuntary child labor. In essence, it's the retailing of human body parts. It's translated into an economic commodity. So take a minute and think of other illegal commodities, drugs, guns, and weapons, things like that. Those are the items that are expendable eventually. You have to replace them. But with humans, you can sell the same person over and over and over again. When considering the profitability of human trafficking, know that human trafficking profits more money than Google, Starbucks, Nike, and the NFL combined. It is a highly profitable crime. So it's so highly profitable that it is $150 billion a year in profits. Sexual exploitation simply means that a person is pressured or coerced into prostitution, they're exploited into the sex industry, or subjected to other forms of sexual abuse, such as sexual slavery. The abuser's motive is usually financial, although it's not necessarily always the case. Most victims of trafficking are related sexual exploitation are women and girls, but it is important to remember that even men, and especially boys, may become victims of this form of human trafficking. And domestic servitude is the seemingly normal practice of a live-in help that is used to cover for the exploitation and control of someone, usually from another country. It's a form of forced labor. In the 2020 Florida Department of Children and Families annual report, there were 1,901 investigations opened. That's within Florida in the year 2020. This is down from the 2019 report, which contained 2,198 investigations. And while it's great that they were down 10%, we do need to keep in mind that with COVID being our big factor in life right now, that schools were closed, and where teachers are considered mandated reporters, and often the reports come from our schools, we weren't able to report as many cases as what are probably happening. But it is positive that it is down. So an interesting fact to know is that according to 2020 statistics, when it comes to human trafficking, that 7 out of 10 victims are women. So that means 3 of the 10 are men. And like I said, often people believe, or when you think of human trafficking, you think of women and female victims only, but this does also happen to men and boys. According to 2020 statistics, 25% of the victims are children. Children that could be any age.
And actually, I can piggyback on that real quick. From the Polaris Project, 50% of the victims are 20 years and younger, 20 years of age and younger.
That's terrifying. So this right here is a map of the Jacksonville area. And as you can see that there are several red boxes and circles within this map. These areas on the map indicate reported cases of human trafficking within Duval County. So you can look around any area of Jacksonville and see that they are not exempt from human trafficking. You have a large area around the beaches. You've got a circle at Atlantic and Kernan, anywhere from I-95 in the airport to downtown to the Commonwealth area to even Blanding Boulevard. So all over Jacksonville, there are cases of reported human trafficking. So a lot of times we tend to think it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen around us, but this right here shows us it is in our backyard, it is happening, it's something that we should be alert to and aware of.
And if you look at the areas, you'll see that there are hot spots where a lot of our youth are hanging out at, or there are intersections, thoroughfares.
Yeah. So one of the big areas that I know that we make sure that we express with the teens, with our students, is that the town center areas are very popular as well. So we want to keep the kids alert that when they go there and when they hang out, or especially out at the beach as well, that you're paying attention and keeping your eyes open and ears open. All right, so when it comes to human trafficking, there are three main roles. We have the buyer, who is also known as the John, and this is the individual who pays for or trades something of value for sexual acts or for labor. You also have the actual trafficker. This is who we typically would know as being the pimp in the sex trafficking, and that is the individual who buys, sells, or trades the individual person. And then thirdly, there is the victim. And this is hopefully going to be a survivor as well. And this is the individual who is forced or coerced to perform sex acts or labor. So it's often asked, well, who is it that's actually buying individuals when it comes to human trafficking? So as you can see on this pie chart here, that 69% of the buyers are of the white descent. Sorry about this beeping. The remaining 31% of buyers in descending order include Asian American and Pacific Islanders, Hispanic and Latinos, African American, the African immigrant, and then lastly, Native Americans. In terms of ages, nearly 60% of buyers are between the ages of 30 and 49. Ages 30 and 49. And then lastly, the statistic that is probably the most shocking to me is that 52% of buyers are married. So additionally, we wonder, when we know these certain statistics and we know the race and background and the ages of people, we can still want to think about maybe what do these people look like? So who is it that is trafficking? These are all people who have been arrested or found guilty of trafficking. You can tell that they all look different. No two people look the same. There's not a specific look or shape to a trafficker. So traffickers often have specific behaviors or characteristic traits as well. This could include them being significantly older than their female companions. They may exploit the person's weaknesses. They may delay sexual advances until trust has been built, or they may express financial difficulties to make the victim feel obligated. It also isn't uncommon for a trafficker to befriend a child or a young teen online through social media or gaming apps that provide private communication. So how is it that victims are trafficked? Victims are trafficked by meeting and identifying an unmet need. They fulfill that need and create a dependence, and they remove any other sources that would be able to fulfill that need. Then they exploit the victim's dependence, and then they rely on trauma bonds. So they rely on this weakness of their victim or of their trafficking victim. And then how are human trafficking victims recruited? There's three components that are included, which include force, fraud, and coercion, which we spoke about at the very beginning. So when it comes to force, this could include the beating, the torture, rape, branding, the restraining, confinement, the starvation, or even the shooting of a victim. Fraud could include a deceptive offer of employment, of education, of romance, of marriage, of a better life, or even the fulfillment of a specific dream. And then coercion could include threats towards the victim, threats toward the victim's family or livelihood, the psychological manipulation, or the threatened use of a legal system, and even just simply intimidation. There is the human trafficking power and control wheel, where it basically shows what can be done, how it is used, and what traffickers are able to do to try to manipulate and intimidate their victims. Tanya, do you want to speak on this at all?
Are you going to have something up on the apps?
Yes, it comes later.
Oh, okay. I was going to speak on the apps. The wheel here is something that we can use, and it'll show emotional abuse. I'm sorry, I'm losing it here. It'll show the different things that, how do I explain this to you guys? Nope, take over, Francis. I just forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
It's okay. It just shows the patterns that can happen and how they can use different tactics of intimidation and abuse to be able to gain control over a person. Excuse me. There's also a human trafficking cycle that happens within the force, fraud, and coercion, which includes, and it can start at any level and circle around, and then includes shame, trauma, the interpersonal violence, and addiction. So considering the modern day form of slavery, which we now call human trafficking, another human being imposing their will and control over a victim in the exchange of something for a service. This is what can happen when we see people who started off as a normal teenager and ended up as a victim of human trafficking, and what their life has kind of turned into before they're able to become a survivor. So one thing that we've discussed is that the human traffickers, they like to, I guess you could say, kind of pick on the vulnerabilities and prey on the vulnerabilities of the victims. So it could be that a victim the human trafficking victim was also a victim of childhood sexual abuse or assault or rape. They could be living with someone who has significantly abused substances. They may identify as LGBTQ plus and then have challenges within their family unit. They could lack opportunities for education, and it could just be because of a lack of supervision. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has discussed that, or has released data points that says in 2020, more than 30,000 cases reported, where of those 91% were endangered runaways. One of the endangered runaways reported in 2019, or of the endangered runaways reported in 2019, 1 in 6 were likely victims of child sex trafficking, and that is still a current statistic as of 2020 as well. And today, the average age of a child sex trafficking victim reported is between the ages of 15 and 17. So there are warning signs that a child may be being groomed or trafficked. That can include physical abuse, such as burns, marks, bruises, or cuts. It can include a sudden change in their dressing, so it could be inappropriate dressing or very sexualized behavior. They can become very withdrawn, depressed, or distracted. Maybe they now have very expensive clothes and accessories, or new shoes, new tattoos. It could also be that they are interacting and sharing personal information with someone, sometimes significantly older than them, online. And it may be a constant cover-up for the abuser, the self-shaming and the blaming. So these next couple slides, I'm going to let Tanya take over, because they are talking about how social media is used for human trafficking to recruit their victims.
Okay, sorry about that. I was reading the chat, so I just totally lost my mind when you put me on the spot there.
That's okay,
I was reading the chat question. Okay, back to where I am. Okay, so Online is really where it's a growing problem. It is becoming like one of the #1 threats, especially to our minors. The majority of DCF cases right now have an online component. You can go ahead and change it to the next one. Okay, so here are some of the apps that you need to be aware of. I know my bar is hiding it right here. This calculator one right there, that's not even actually a calculator. It's actually a hidden vault where people can go in and hide material, and they can hide inappropriate pictures and videos and things. And a parent might look at a phone and think, wow, it's just a calculator, but it's not. It's actually hiding an alter personality or an alter life of the student or a child themselves. So that can be tricky. But traffickers gather intel, they break down laws, they build trust, then they exploit, they extort, and they traffic a victim. It's very easy to be groomed and you don't even know you're being groomed. They rely on vulnerabilities. They pick up on it by watching Facebook and how a student or somebody talks about they've had a bad day, or they're not getting along with their parent, and they come in and they act like they're your friend, and they build this trust. And before you know it, you need that friendship, or you need that companionship and what they're giving you. And the next thing you know, you're caught up in something that you don't know how to get out of. And we're finding, like I said, the DCF cases, it's 50% now have an online component. And the new numbers haven't come out. We're a little nervous about them coming out because COVID, we were just all locked down for over a year, some of us. So we know that more people were online ever than before. So it's a scary thing there. I don't know if there's another one.
No, that's the last one on the apps. And
Okay.
we do try to encourage our teachers to share this information with the students, as well as with parents. It is important that as parents that you are paying attention to what's happening on their electronic devices and see what it is that they're doing. And, you know, the kids, we know how kids are, and that they often think that they're invincible and it won't happen to them. And sometimes they just need our assistance to be able to help them realize when potential danger is happening, because a lot of times this can be where it doesn't seem like it's an issue, but it can turn into much bigger issues than they're even ready to handle or be equipped with the ability to handle it. So this next portion was supposed to be a video that we were going to show you. However, the website that this video is produced through, it seems to be down. I would highly encourage you, and I will put the title in the chat box for you, but I highly encourage you to look up the Runaway Train 25 video. It is a fabulous video that has been done, very well done, that it goes through the song Runaway Train, if any of you are familiar with that song, but it is able to display current local missing children throughout the video as well. But I highly encourage you to search it, and we will put it in the chat box for you as well. So once their website is back up, it will play for you. And it's not normal that their website's down, so it just must be some glitch that's happening today. All right, so what is it that we can do? We do have various ways to be able to combat human trafficking and to help make sure that our children are safe and that our children's friends are safe. And it doesn't happen unless all of us come together to try to put this to arrest and make this stop. There is the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which can be called, as well as the Florida Abuse Hotline. And as always, if you suspect this or if you have any questions, you're always able to reach out to your school counselor at the school that your child goes to or the neighborhood school. Like I said, all of our staff members are going through the training for human trafficking and domestic violence throughout this school year, which provides them a lot of resources as well for them to be able to speak with you if you have questions. So that actually wraps up what our presentation is, and we will be able to open it up for questions here in a moment through the chat box. I will note to you that our contact information is on this last slide here. So Tanya's email as well as Kelly's email, who is their program director for her song. You can always reach out to them if you have any questions, or you're able to reach out to myself or Heather Albritton, who is the director of health and physical education at hep@duvalschools.org. And we are more than happy to get in touch with you and help you in any way that we can. Tanya, do we have any questions?
We had one comment that I was reading. It is from Jacob. It says, I always thought trafficking was a discrete act. A trafficker kidnaps a victim and then takes her to the seller. But this sounds more like ongoing relationships that slowly result in the victim being under someone else's control. So that is also considered trafficking. Interesting.
You're exactly right. And I think that's a misconception I think that I had as well before I started working and partnering with Her Song to start to build these lessons, is that I also thought that, you know, this is just where basically you're kidnapped and whisked away and never seen again in your area that you were at. But it's not that. I mean, the kids live here. There's kids in our schools that this is happening to, as well as adults around the city. And they're not necessarily being taken other places. It's happening. And we saw the map with the hotspots that shows where human trafficking cases are being reported. So that is a great point, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
The next one is from Penny. I would like to know how we are handling runaways. Yes. So Penny, we do the best that we can. We try to inform. We have numbers out in the street that if runaways are out there, that they can contact a number, and we try to get them into a safe situation immediately. But that's a good question, because the majority of the runaways are the ones that become trafficked first and foremost, because they're out there. It's easy for somebody to walk up to them and tell them that I have a place for you to sleep that's warm, or I have food, and they befriend them for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, before they slowly groom them. That process, they've connected to them, given them something they've needed, and now they feel like this person is saving them and really cares about them, and then before you know it, they're now trafficked. Jacob says, at what point in the grooming process does the action become illegal? As soon as in the grooming process, I would say, is when they use them to get a gain, like money from them, or they've received something from them. As soon as there's that exchange of something of value, then it becomes illegal. Then it becomes you're being trafficked. It's not grooming anymore. Penny says, this is an ongoing issue in the area I work, so we should be looking at programs for the runaways. So many times it appears that they are not even looked for by Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. I don't know about that. I'm not from here much. You know, I'm up here every once in a while. So I can tell you that we work with the state's attorney's office here. They are very active. I know they have personally recently brought us a young lady straight in as soon as they got a hold of her and asked us to take her in and what we can do for her. So it's hard for me to think that they're not involved. The sheriff's department are getting more active, and they're training their sheriffs. I know my office just probably 4 weeks ago had a 2-day period where they trained all officers on a rotating shift, because you can't have them all at once, of course. So they're trying to bring awareness to them and educate them. But just like the question above earlier, people have a misconception of what trafficking is. You automatically think that what you see in the movies, somebody kidnapped, somebody held, you know, in chains in a closet, or somebody being brought from another country across the border. Yes, that happens, but that's not the majority of it. The majority of it is people right here, and it doesn't look that way. So we have to get rid of those misconceptions, and we're doing it through education as much as we can. Yes, we need more resources for them. In Utah, they have a required program for all runaways. We need something similar here. That's interesting. I'd like to look into that and see more of that. Our legal advocate that's at our office just came back from a meeting, and it was a bunch of lawyers and social workers that got together, a group of them, and they're looking into more ideas on how we can provide for different areas of trafficking, like try to prevent it ahead of time and what can we do afterwards. So that's a good idea. I'll have to look into that. Thank you for giving us that information.
So Tanya, this would probably be this is more on your alley. How do you go about deprogramming children who have been groomed and who think the trafficker is their friend and not a threat?
Yeah, that's called trauma bond, and it's pretty deep, and it takes a long time. And sometimes you're not able to break that bond, and that's the unfortunate thing. There are different ways, counseling, showing them love, because a lot of times they have a misconception of what love really is. School, just programs, just like I said, a lot of counseling. It's hard. Every person is different. Everybody's been programmed a different way. So that's hard to pinpoint something exact there for you.
It says, agreed, I was groomed when I was a teenager. I knew it was happening at the time, so it didn't get too far, but it was very creepy. Well, kudos to you for recognizing what was happening and being able to get away and out of that situation.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate all of you, all of your time. Ladies, you did a fabulous job presenting this tragic information, but it's best we not keep our heads in the sand. It's best we educate ourselves and share the information with others, get the word out. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night, and we hope to see you again soon at another Parent Academy course coming up. Good night, everybody.